Gang stalking is just another form of spiritual attack that the false matrix uses to instill fear in humans. It is a more organized and concentrated form of spiritual attack that's targeted towards people that are either on the verge of waking up to this third dimensional illusion, or people that have found a way to wake up to this elusive reality called the matrix. There are many deceptive tricks that the attacker uses in gang stalking to project fear onto the target. And to really understand the attacker's fear strategy, you first need to understand the nature of the attack. Gang stalking, like any other form of spiritual attack, is not a human agenda. There are fourth dimensional entities that seek to control the human race. These are fallen angelic races, and there's a whole story on why these entities feel that the human race is their personal property. I try to explain that in one of my videos, which I've linked somewhere on the screen. These entities are the architects behind everything you may refer to as a spiritual attack or a spiritual warfare. Every system of control in the human society today is established and controlled by these entities, including organized religion, the corporate system, the government, the media. All of these systems are established and controlled by these fallen angelic races. Now, the reason why these entities are able to manipulate and control the human society in the way that they do is not necessarily because they're smarter or more intelligent than humans. It's more so because these are higher dimensional entities, so they possess higher knowledge. This higher knowledge is meant to support the natural evolution of life across the universe. But these entities are fallen angels. In other words, these are higher dimensional entities that rebelled against life at some point in their evolution. So the very essence of their existence is to control and disrupt the natural processes of life across the universe. And so instead of using this higher knowledge for the original intended purpose, which is to support the natural evolution of life across the universe, they use them to disrupt the natural processes of creation. Now, humans also have the ability to connect with higher dimensions and access this knowledge. But most humans arrive on Earth in lower states of consciousness, with different timelines to awaken. This is what 3D consciousness is. So most of us humans are mostly unaware for most of the initial stages of our lives. There are few people that arrive on the planet in higher states of consciousness. These are usually ascended masters that have come back to help humanity in some capacity. So their mission on the planet requires that they become conscious earlier than most other humans. For most people, the journey is to arrive on the planet in 3D consciousness, where they're mostly unconscious, and move towards 5D consciousness, where they become more and more conscious along the way. This is actually what your spiritual journey is. So your entire life's journey is not different from your spiritual journey. Now, the journey from 3D to 5D consciousness requires every human to go through the fourth dimension. This is not a physical journey. This is the journey from a lower state of consciousness, which is 3D consciousness, to a higher state of consciousness, which is 5D consciousness. The fourth dimension is the base station of these malevolent alien races, aka fallen angels, or demons, as referred to by many religious texts today, that seek to control the human race. The only way for these entities to maintain their dominance over the human race is to trap humans in 3D consciousness. Because in that state, humans are mostly unaware of their divine nature, so they are unable to tap into higher knowledge. So they've created a system to trap humans in 3D consciousness and prevent humans from evolving into 5D consciousness. This system is what we know today as the false matrix. So every human that exists in 3D and 4D consciousness can be controlled by these entities through the false matrix. This is why the sages and yogis of the world have always prioritized raising the human consciousness. Because the only way to free humanity from these entities is to raise the human consciousness. Now, what happens is that every time you start to evolve on your spiritual journey, that's when these entities come at you with all these gang stalking and spiritual attacks. Most people are taken by surprise at their lowest points with these attacks. So they end up being trapped by these entities in 4D consciousness. 4D is a higher state of consciousness than 3D, but it's all about control and dominance. So most of these people now become more aware than the average person, but this awareness is used for manipulation, control, and dominance. Once you get trapped by these entities in 4D consciousness, you automatically become an agent of the false matrix. So your own ascension up the matrix ladder now depends on how many other souls you can trap in 3D and 4D consciousness. So it becomes your full-time job to ensure that no other human ascends beyond 4D. As far as the target of gang stalking, if you pay close attention, you will notice two types of gang stalkers. There's the partially awakened gang stalkers. These are people that got trapped in 4D consciousness on their ascension journey, so they became agents of the false matrix. These people have some understanding of what's going on. They do not have the full picture because the false matrix is the fourth dimensional system, so it cannot be perceived in 3D and 4D consciousness. You have to evolve into 5D consciousness if you really want to perceive the false matrix for what it is. But at least these people have enough awareness to know that they're playing a part in something bigger and that they can manipulate this thing to their own advantage. These people can be found in various positions, such as directors, managers, CEOs, presidents, celebrities, and so on. The higher you ascend up the matrix ladder, the higher your position. Their main role is gatekeeping, which in this context means preventing the human race from evolving. And in most cases, they're playing this role without realizing that they're doing it. These are usually the people that are obsessed with all these demonic activities, including gang stalking, smear campaigns, black magic, occult attacks, destiny swapping, etc., etc. And then there's the other types of gang stalkers, the ones that are totally unaware of what's going on. These are people that still exist in 3D consciousness, so they're mostly oblivious of the false matrix. These people include children, adults, sound people, mad people, people with physical disabilities, etc., etc. There are family members, religious folks, government workers, soldiers, policemen, engineers, corporate professionals, media practitioners. Basically, every human that still exists in 3D consciousness, which again, is most humans on the planet today, falls into this category. These are the folks that are used by these fallen angels to constantly harass the target. These folks are used for various tasks, such as constantly following the target around, displaying deadly instruments to the target, using food poisoning to constantly poison the target, using corporate and government agencies to constantly bully the target, and using various security agencies, such as the immigration, the police, and the army, to constantly intimidate the target. These folks are also used for various accident simulations, such as vehicle and motorcycle accident attempts on the target's life. These entities do not see humans as the sovereign beings that we are. They literally see us as their energy source, so they feel totally justified for committing all these atrocities in the human society. Actually, they showed you this in the movie The Matrix with the character Agent Smith. Agent Smith is a depiction of these fallen angels and the tricks they are using to manipulate these low vibrational humans to gang stalk you. I talked about Dracon 3/40s in one of my videos. That's what Agent Smith is, and that video is linked on the screen, by the way. The people that Agent Smith is using in the movie to execute his mission, you know, those people that he just possesses at will, uses them to do whatever he wants them to do, and then leaves their bodies whenever he's done using them. Those are the people that we're referring to as gang stalkers in real life. These are humans that are of a lower intelligence that are being used by these fallen angels to gang stalk you. And the fact that Agent Smith can just use them at will is a depiction of their unconscious nature. In other words, gang stalkers are just less conscious avatars, aka humans that still exist in 3D and 4D consciousness, that are being used by these fallen angels, aka Agent Smith, to create a fear-based illusion around the target, which is Neo, and prevent him from waking up to the false matrix. So the goal is to prevent humans from evolving into 5D consciousness. Because the moment you evolve into 5D consciousness, you wake up to the false matrix and game over. As far as the target of gang stalking, if you remain resilient against the attack for long enough, you will start to experience activities that only happen in simulations. Example, how do you explain a situation where a vehicle comes from behind you, passes you by, and goes in the opposite direction, straight ahead of you? And then 5 minutes later, without coming back from the direction it went in earlier, the same exact vehicle, with the same exact license plate, by the way, comes from behind you again, passes you by, and goes in the same exact direction it went in earlier. This is going to happen not once or twice, so it's not like some coincidental situation, right? It's going to keep happening over and over again until you realize that it's being done intentionally to project fear onto you. There are countless number of other things that you will experience as a target that cannot be explained, like hearing sounds when there's nobody and nothing around, like being gang stalked by animals, dead people, and so on. These are all the tricks of these fallen angels, using their fourth dimensional capabilities to create illusions in the human society. So as a target, it's important that you do not waste your energies on these activities. I mean, you can observe them and enjoy the scenes, but just know that they cannot affect you in any ways, so they have zero impact on you. Which brings us to the final segment of this video. Finally, it's important to understand that you cannot be affected by these entities if you do not consent to be used in this agenda. Obviously, there are other things that they may try to do to inconvenience you, like trying to starve you to death by cutting off all of your sources of income and help. But that's about it for the most part. Beyond that, the only thing they can do is create these illusions around you with hope that they can eventually deceive you or scare you into making an agreement with them. The people that are being used by these entities, aka the gang stalkers, are people that have consented to be used in this agenda. And 99% of the times, these people were deceived into making these agreements. See, these entities understand universal and spiritual laws, so they know that they cannot impose these activities on humans because that's going to be violating universal laws. So the only other option they have is to deceive humans into making these agreements, which is exactly what they're doing. Most of the systems in the human society today have been strategically designed to deceive humans into selling out their free will to these entities. Some people are consenting to this agenda through their families, generational curses, or real stuff. So this thing has been the way of life of some families for generations. Being born into those families automatically means that you get to inherit these generational curses. Some are consenting through their religion, which of course religion is the largest support system for all these spiritual attacks on the planet today. Some are consenting through different agreements, which is why it's important that you do not go into any agreements if you do not understand it. And if you're going into an agreement, then make sure to read the fine prints. Most people are being lured into this agenda with little things like contract opportunities, corporate positions, travel opportunities, nice cars, nice homes, smartphones, pair of sneakers. You get the idea. These are all things that a human being is capable of creating if you take the time to know yourself.